Good.
Right.
So
Perfect.
so you realized your true nature in summer of 24.
Well, yes, I started watching your videos in early summer last year, and I think it was one of the videos of like Sunny or Kylie
Oh
that
yeah.
I saw.
Good.
Yeah, and it became very, very clear to me the distinction between effortless being and engaging the mind. And yeah, it was a really, yeah, a special moment. And I could also notice a big change afterwards. Like,
Mm,
yeah, like it fell down, like the sense of seeking,
mm.
the sense of like I really want something from the world in order to feel fulfilled. And yeah, so it really, yeah, it was a very, very moment that was kind of a shifting point. It doesn't mean it was just flowers and roses after
No,
that, but,
no, that's
but
good.
yeah, but it was definitely I can really trace it back because
Mm.
it I don't know, it was really, really clear, the way you put it, and yeah, the way they saw it. Yeah, it really helped me to make this distinction,
Great.
actually. Yeah.
Well, actually, the seeking falling away is quite that's quite an important thing to notice
It's
because
such a relief
yeah,
also.
it is, isn't it? Yeah, it is. It's so nice.
Yes, yes,
It's
definitely.
really good.
Yeah, I mean afterwards the mind still tried to hook me back in with
Yes.
seeking.
Yeah.
Definitely. And yeah, and sometimes I still like fell for it, but there was always some kind of like, yeah, after some time I was like, no, 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 that's not how where we will go.
That's
Yeah.
great. Well, it's good that you make that distinction, really. So, have you had any intense invitations, or have they've been quite manageable?
Well, I remember that shortly after there were what was really very intense was actually the sensations in the body.
Mm.
So it was like big waves of tension in the body coming up, which I haven't really experienced so intensely before. Or maybe I have, but not in that conscious way.
Mm. Mm.
So it was very tricky for some time. And I also, in the beginning, when they came up, I mean, I still was somehow in the honeymoon with this for some days,
Yeah.
weeks. I don't really remember, but yeah, it showed up quite quickly after that.
Mm.
And in the first, yeah, the first days or weeks it showed up, I mean, the mind was also coming in and trying to tell me that this is it has something to do with me. There is something not seen, not
Mm.
right, you know?
Yeah.
Why else would this come up if
Yes.
everything was solved and you you
Yes.
would you would you would know your nature all the time, right?
Yes.
So it made that thought made it very difficult for the emotion to release itself. So
Yes.
I got stuck with this kind of emotion and thought that I was like
Yes.
something was not seen or something like that. And but really after some weeks with this intense emotions, I realized, wait a second, this has nothing to do with me. The this emotions coming up.
Mm.
And after that was seen that it was um it was okay for this tensions. It was like it felt like an energetic kind of a knot, in
Mm.
my belly,
Mm.
that it came up, and I felt like it's okay, and I can actually notice it from this wider space. And also, I at that time I watched I think a conversation. I don't know if you know her from Shakti Katerina.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Mm.
she's also one of the teachers in the book, and she
Yes.
said that it's it's like a washing laundry, that these things can come up, and it's not necessarily something bad.
Mm,
Because I also felt like, um, if you, I don't know, if you have seen your true nature, that these things won't come up.
mm.
It's normal, I guess, that
Yes,
these things come
definitely.
up, because,
Mm,
but then it's this contrast is so huge between the freedom of your nature and these very intense emotions,
yes.
but kind of like meeting the two together, like seeing it from that space.
Mm,
That took me quite a time
mm.
to actually see and realize. And then it was very quick to that it could dissolve, kind of. And it still comes back from time to time, but it's not, I don't see it as any kind of a problem nowadays.
That's great. Well, the mind is very ingenious in the way it presents the invitations, and you can see how it finds a vulnerable point, and that's something which initially it just seems too personal to see it as an invitation, but then gradually you can see how it's working, and well, it's a good sign the way you've reached such clarity because the invitations still come in, but they've actually reduced, which is a sign that you've been declining them because the more we decline them, the less they appear really, because they only keep coming if we energize them. So it's great that you've seen that. So
Yeah,
uh,
totally. It's it it still tries to sneak in other ways.
yes,
Yeah, but yeah, in that way, like this kind of emotion, I feel it's easier and it's
mm,
quicker.
mm,
And also about the tension, I realized that prior to early summer, this was like some kind of, like, if I look back also, the time before, it was like a constant, this very, very subtle tension that's going on all the time,
mm.
it didn't matter what I was doing. If I was sitting outside
Yes,
drinking coffee, if I was cooking, there was always this little
yes,
inner, like, hurry up or do
yes,
something, or and I feel this is like kind of the fuel of the ego or of the mind to stop you from sitting with yourself and to
yes,
to relax in yourself. And I really realized that this was going on before, and it went on after as
mm,
well,
yes,
with distinction that I could see this was going on, and then notice it first
mm,
consciously, and secondly seeing it's not a problem, and seeing if kind of like in this loving space,
mm,
so it could settle down,
mm,
not from today one day to another, but
mm.
more and more and more.
Yes, because really that sense of contraction is something which it's like a program really, which has been installed and it's sort of running in the background, but it keeps the investment in personalization going in a way. And but yeah, the way you describe it's really good because that's exactly how it works. The initially there's a seeing that it's there, and then gradually it just dissolves. And yeah, the space of one's true nature is just available, and that predominates. So.
Yeah.
So you've made such progress in such a short time. Amazing.
Yeah, it feels like it's if you look at the whole picture, it's still quite short.
Mm,
Or like, I don't know, or even it feels even long. I don't really know actually,
mm,
but yeah, it's like I feel like very dedicated to this, and
mm,
I really want every second I have, I try to marinate in it
mm,
as
mm.
best as I can.
Yes.
And yeah, and I still have, my normal life going on, a job and so on, but
Mm,
like every time I have, I just try to sit and be in unity consciousness. For example, I take like every day I take, not every day, but when I go to the office, I take like 1 hour to go by the U-Bahn, by the
Mhm.
metro to my job.
Mm.
So in this 1 hour, like and the subway, it can be quite intense. Um,
It's a good
so in
opportunity,
Berlin,
though.
sorry.
It's a good opportunity, actually,
Yes,
isn't it?
exactly. And I'm sitting there just like choosing to be in unity consciousness with all these people or not people, And I'm just having a lovely time.
Mm.
And yeah, it also feels like many things don't matter that much
Mm.
anymore, whether I am here, whether I am somewhere in a tropical paradise, like
Mm.
both is okay.
Yeah,
It
that's great.
yeah.
You're really lucky, actually. I feel because you had a nice childhood, um, some of the programming to do with trauma was never really installed. And then also because you're an artist, practicing art really is always coming from effortless being. So there's been a continuity really. So from childhood, probably there was a lot of creativity in childhood as well. And then as who've grown, then practicing art is something which has maintained that innocence and the alignment with your infinite nature. So it's it's quite easy to see, and also because you're still very young, there hasn't really been the experiences in the human realm which can be limiting. So you're very fortunate, really.
Yeah, actually, I'm really, grateful for everything that happened, and especially for my family, for my upbringing. Like,
Mm,
it's really, it was really great, and I mean, especially like the women of my family, they're very, very, very connected and
mm,
very
mm,
yeah, very spiritually aligned.
mm.
Like I also wrote you that in my
Yes,
email. Like I had a very spiritual grandmother, and I'm very connected. She passed away, but I'm very, very connected to her still.
fantastic.
And yeah, it's so beautiful to have had an upbringing like that. It was not that it was always easy. Like my
Mm,
parents also separated and stuff like that. But in general, it was always um yeah, a very
mm,
loving home. And yeah, and my creativity was also supported by my parents.
mm,
And
mm,
I didn't study art.
mm,
So in school, like I was very, very, very creative as a child,
mm.
and in primary school already as well. But then when I went to high school and then to university, I was still doing art, but it was kind of like it seemed like other things were more important, like getting a proper career or something
Sure.
like and I still did art. Like it comes to me really effortlessly,
Mm,
like drawing something on a t-shirt and giving it
mm,
to a friend or something. That was always with me, but the focus was then in that time more on on the more like the how yeah, the mind predominant
mm.
realm, I would say.
Yes.
And And then actually it was interesting because in the when COVID started, um, I had to be more time at home, and to keep me mentally sane, I started to draw much, much more again. So for me, it was
Oh,
really a
good.
blessing. So I really every night I was drawing, I was doing art and so on. And I started to post this, and people got interested in my art. So it kind of became slowly, slowly uh, also something I would do to
Mm,
for my living.
mm,
But it's such a interesting path how it developed,
mm,
because it developed out of such a love for it.
mm,
And then I put more effort into it because I wanted to make a
mm,
living out of it. And in my head, it was like, I want to become the artist, and I want to
mm,
uh, earn my living with that. And my dream is to make uh to make a living as an artist, to become an artist, And and actually it was very interesting because at the point when I was making a living from my art, and I was at that time putting so much effort into all of that, not just the art, because
Mm.
it's also all this, like, I had a whole social media thing going on,
Yes.
and managing stuff and shipping, and it got quite complex, and I
Yes.
lost kind of the joy for
Mm.
it at that point.
Mm.
So when I was at the point that I always dreamed of and wanted, I was feeling exactly the same as before, or even worse,
Wow, that's interesting. Yes.
And at that point, I was like, oh my God. It was very devastating, actually. But I realized that, and that's when kind of the non-dual seeking
Mm.
began,
Mm.
because I realized that it doesn't really matter in what hamster wheel I want to
Yes, certainly.
myself in. If it's like the art career, okay, now I don't want the art career. Maybe next time I want that. No, no, no. Everything I want from the world, it will just be that wheel again. And I saw that really clearly at the time.
Mm.
And for me, it was very devastating to
Mm.
see that. But that started this other search of like
Yes.
this non-dual thing, and I started to read Rhonda's book, and then it started, yeah, this kind of path of, yeah, looking for the non-dual teachers. Before that, I was also practicing Buddhism and other
Mhm.
kind of meditations, but yeah, that's when it started to get quite intense.
Mm.
And I also started to, yeah, have very deep experiences in meditation, of like non-dual experiences, like being really the absolute loving space. And
Mm.
but at that time, and this took me quite some time, actually, until finding your videos, that I could see that in
Mm.
the loving space
Mm.
of me being in a closed room and nothing else,
Mm.
just in meditation. But then when I went out in the world, it still felt painful. So
Mm.
the gap was very big for
Yeah.
me at
Yeah.
some point. And I didn't really know how to bridge it. And it was actually only after finding your videos that I realized, oh, I could decline the invitations
Yes.
in my daily life as well.
Mm.
Um, that was really such a game changer. And
Great.
yeah, because it feels like now this gap is much less there than it used to.
Well, the transformation into being on the metro and being in unity consciousness on the metro, that's an indicator of how well you integrated unity consciousness into the world.
It feels like I can choose it at will to be in unity consciousness.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic.
It doesn't mean I consciously do that all the time.
Mm.
And I think I also wrote you that in the email, that there is a bit of sometimes a confusion, because mm, I heard some people say that, they feel like there is no one there,
Mm.
or no person. I understand that.
Mm.
And every time I look, I cannot find a person.
No.
Never. But still, it feels a little bit tricky, because when I'm adapting the personal mode,
Mm.
this is here, and
It's
this
tangible, yeah.
stings, and
Yes.
sometimes it can be tricky, and then the mind comes in and said, or if I had to focus on something, or um, do something more in the personal mode, let's say,
Mm.
afterwards, when I come back, the mind would come in and say, you see, there you were a person again. You didn't make it. And I now see it more clearly, that too is an invitation,
Yes.
but sometimes it's tricky.
Well, it's really it's quite easy to resolve that paradox in the distinction between effortless being, which is the body of wisdom, and the mental body, because some non-dual teachers, especially in Neo-Advaita, they say the person disappears and there is no one. And what they're describing really is alignment with effortless being.
Mhm.
So you're fully familiar with that, so you know exactly what it is. Excuse me, to just remain as the infinite field of awareness, rather than to be present in the personal mode. But it's really that those teachings, they sort of superimpose the absolute on the relative, and they pretend that you sort of disappear in a puff of smoke. But that isn't really to anyone, actually. Um, as you say, that's really an invitation. It's an invitation which is making it appear as though you're not quite fully there, because if you were fully there, then you would disappear completely. But
Yeah.
really, in terms of the koshas, the benefit you have is that you're able to integrate impersonal being into the personal mode of experience. So that's a real benefit, because people in Neo-Advaita, even though they say, oh, there is no one, on a practical level, whatever is coming up on a personal level, so there could be emotional and mental invitations, they can still be accepting those, and they can still be in turmoil. But they would just say, oh, well, that's just, the beloved, or, that's just the way it is. But actually, you're fortunate, because you've made the distinction between impersonal being in the personal mode, and you realize that from the sovereignty of your infinite nature, you can actually regulate the investment in the personal mode of experience, and it can be on your terms. So the aspects you really like, experiencing infinite love, finding its way into the personal mode, expansion, compassion, all of those things, they're all available. But the aspects which are energetically depleting, like fear, anxiety, any of those experiences, you realize they're just invitations, and you don't need to accept them. So yeah, that's quite a common one, though. But until until there is realization, you can see now really clearly that there is a distinction between impersonal being and the personal mode. And once you've seen that, it's really, well, actually, it just gives a much richer experience, because the option you have is to integrate impersonal being into the personal mode. And that's really, it's in a way, it's quite simple. It's just that in the personal mode, in the way we're conditioned, there's usually a commentary which is accompanying the activity we're doing. So it's saying, oh, I like this, I don't like this, I wish it was another way, those kind of things. But more and more, and you're able to do this consciously, there's the ability to really just rest as impersonal being, and then the personal mode is activated from moment to moment, as and when you need it, really. But the the commentary is turned off, so it's just the simplicity of whatever's happening. So riding on the metro to work, or meeting people, or spending time with friends or family.
Yeah.
There, well, a really good indicator is, as you said at the beginning of the conversation, which is you don't really feel that you need to be on a beach in the Caribbean. You're just as happy doing the washing up.
Yes.
And that's a really good sign, because it shows that the grading and the programming in the dualistic mode isn't really taking hold anymore, because the simplicity of just presence in whatever you're doing, it can just be really delightful on the metro, or in the kitchen doing some baking, or and you can also have wonderful experiences with people you love to spend time with, in locations you like to visit.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And also when there is a mental commentary, And yeah, you also helped me with seeing that, is that even when that appears, like I try to just as quickly as I can be aware of any sounds
Yes.
um coming up in my environment, and I kind of like I'm aware of the sound and the commentary, and I
Mm.
see they're on the same, it's the same.
Yes.
So it establishes again the impersonal mode because it's seen as one field. So
Yes.
I'm not bothered more by the thought than by the sound of
Fantastic.
traffic, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's really because you've stabilized the ability to rest as the infinite field of awareness, which is an infinite impersonal field within which all the forms appear, including the body mind of Hanna. So once that's available, then there's the possibility of equality really through all experiences, which is why you don't mind being on a beach or in the kitchen. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because there's clarity in seeing that all along you've actually remained as this infinite field of awareness, and then you have the joy of the experience of um, of Hannah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing you've integrated so many aspects really very easily.
Yeah. It doesn't always feel so easy. Because sometimes yeah, I mean this I get still invitations from time to time, but I also feel like it feels almost like, yeah, it's calmer
Hmm.
from every
Yes,
week to every week, or every month to every month.
yes.
But yeah, I also know that that yeah, it's it's a process, and it's okay if there are still things coming up. For example, for me, what is at the moment also coming up is that uh in the morning when I wake up, I realize that as soon as I wake up, and I'm in this little in between space, not quite very exactly awake, but
Hmm.
not quite asleep, or maybe already, yeah, something like that. When I wake up, the mind is bombarding me so much, like it just sends everything in it can,
Yes.
and it's I really because the mind hasn't not so much the chance anymore during the day when I'm
No,
like, it's
fully
more in
awake.
that in between state.
Yes.
And then I still and I wake up, and sometimes I can even feel burdened
Hmm.
because it's easier, and sometimes I accept it in the morning. So it kind of feels like, oh, okay, I have to get up and like clear my mind a little bit
Hmm.
before I can start my day, because the bombardment is really heavy in the morning for
Hmm.
me.
It's good you've recognized that really, because that's how the dualistic realm works, because it's trying to invite you into identification with the personal mode and to hook you in energetically. So it finds the point at which you're most vulnerable, which is at the junction point between sleep and
Yeah.
waking. And sometimes there's the residue. There can be an emotional residue from the dream state, for instance. There can be different aspects, but yeah, the way you see it is great because you know exactly what's going on.
Mm.
Because when you know, it's almost like waking up and your neighbour's got the TV on really loud, and it's just a really nonsensical program that you don't really want to listen to.
Yeah, right. It feels like that, yeah. But sometimes then I can get an extra invitation, which is like, isn't it supposed that I should wake up and be the empty loving space, you know?
Yes.
Ah,
Yeah,
but
well, that is the dualistic realm's ingenious in the way it does these things.
yeah,
But you can smile at it because, as you say, you can
right.
really having well, being really rested is a very it's a good approach just to maintain balance because if you're overtired or if you've been working too hard, then the invitations can be delivered more intensely. But you'll just find that you just by observing the invitations as you wake up, they won't bother you so much. But really, just having doing things in a very leisurely way. So if you have to work, for instance, making sure you have time just to be able to sit up and adjust to the waking state, and being able to do things in a really leisurely way, because then you're not buying into the sort of frantic mode of the mind, which is trying to invite you into either hurrying or feeling as though you're burdened, or there are things, it's sort of projections of fear about responsibilities during the day, things you need to achieve, the time available, those kind of things. But
Yeah.
what you'll notice more and more is that those invitations can continue for a little while, but more and more you'll notice, well, actually, my day worked out really well. And so you then begin to see that the invitations in the early morning, they're not true, and then you can disregard them quite easily.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think, yeah, exactly. And the mind knows that it's the weak point, and the um yeah, so it tries very hard.
Mm, mm,
Yeah. But you are right. And yeah, and that's really one preference I already try to establish every day as best as
mm,
I can.
mm.
Yeah. And
It's good.
sometimes even if there is, like if one day I'm late or something, and then sometimes I I have to run somewhere,
Mm.
it doesn't is necessarily accompanied with the feeling of
Oh,
hurry
that's
up,
good.
it's
That's
just like
really
the
good,
body
actually.
running.
Yes,
Yeah,
fantastic. That's great. Yeah.
yeah. Or even if there can be a sense of like, or if there is something showing up like this inner tension or pressure,
Mm,
very quickly realized, and I'm just like, oh, wait a second, something is off. I sit down
mm.
and it can go.
Just
I,
settle.
I don't hold it for, I don't know, days or hours
Mm,
or weeks
mm.
as before. Yeah.
It's really good. And regarding your art, what I would say is um, there's something which can emerge there, which is quite effortless, which is um, in some ways we tend to adopt more kind of worldly approaches, like using social media or different things which can create a burden. But you may find that your art will evolve in a way which is quite effortless, really. And it's just focusing on the joyful aspect of it is the most important thing. So if you're working part of the time, then the priority is for your art to just be as joyful as possible.
Yes.
And so, because with art, whatever the intention is, it's apparent on some level, and people will see that, and and it will find its own way, really. So,
Yes.
so even though it seemed like a little hamster wheel, there can be an opening up where it can happen in a very joyful way. And
Yes.
but also you're a really good communicator, and I'm sure there are going to be people. Do you have friends who are interested in non-duality, or is it that's
Yes. Friends
fantastic,
and family, and
fantastic,
yes, yes, definitely. And I talk a lot actually with my mother, with my sister, with my partner. So
wonderful.
yeah,
That's great because
yes, I'm very lucky.
yes.
Yes.
Well, people can come into your space too, where you'll be able to share your knowledge, and that's something which it seems to be part of the package of realization, really, just that we seem to be called on to help others. So you may not have the intention, but they probably will step into your space.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens. But for now, it's really as you say, I really consciously give space to my art, and that's also why I got now another job, a part-time job, so that my art is absolutely free, and I really already feel um that kind of a pressure dropping down, and I feel like art is also thanking me that it can be free again,
Yes,
and it can really
fantastic.
just express itself very, very lightly
Yeah,
without needing to fit in any category without pleasing
Yes.
anyone, without anyone needing to like it, you know. It's
Yes.
and most of the time I now just do it for me.
Mm,
It ends up in the drawer and I'm happy, you know. It's
mm,
great, you know. And yeah, and it's funny because I was also looking for an art teacher, and actually I found a very amazing art teacher,
mm,
and it's so funny because it turned out that she's also very spiritual, and actually she helped me in her art classes
mm.
to integrate the aspect of seeing, because I still, when I see, sometimes before it was more like I thought like the subject object mode um would be there for sure if you would
Yes.
see something, right? So
Yes.
this is objects and but it's so funny when I came into her classes, she was like, we were drawing some models and she would say, "Ha, Hannah, that drawing is nice, you know, but what is that here around you? There is something.
Mm.
Draw that too." And I'm like, "Oh wow, that's interesting." I kind of understand you. And then she was like, "Yeah, draw the space, draw the space." I was like, "Okay, look at the space, look at the spaces in between." I'm like, "Oh yeah, the spaces in between." And it's really funny because since going to this art class, like it all blended in, and
So
it
you're
really
saying,
helped me with
yes,
integration, you know. It's so funny how this came to me effortlessly at
wonderful.
also it's
Well,
really
your teacher's almost describing unity consciousness. So
yes, yes,
rather than just seeing the objects,
exactly.
you're seeing the space in between. So it's unified really, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah, and she teaches that to her students.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's
Because
really
yeah, it's adopting equality really in perception. So instead of seeing something as being important and then the space being unimportant, the space is equally important.
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm really enjoying this so much, and yeah, I feel like the art can now flow
Mm,
much more easily.
mm,
And yeah, and also my sister is going more or less at the same path as I do, and but
sure.
she's creative also in many ways. Like
Mm,
she sings, and actually what we are doing at the moment is she writes poems
mm,
about the process of realization, let's
mm.
say, and I do a painting on it, and this has emerged really
Without
also quite
trying.
effortlessly,
Yeah.
and it feels like this is a process that can take as much time as it wants.
Mm,
We just enjoy it so
mm,
much,
mm,
and there is no objective behind it. It's
mm.
just something that we do because we enjoy it as sisters,
Well,
as
yeah.
expression of this, as getting inspiration for our art.
Mm.
Yeah, and yeah.
It's great things are evolving on so many different levels.
Yeah, yeah. And also I feel like because yeah, it's, um spirituality or seeing one's true nature and art or effortless being is so immediately connected
Yes.
that I think maybe something like combining the two would be something I would be really, you know, interested,
Yes.
or maybe it can be a doorway for people, because sometimes I feel like um for some people, you know, uh this whole spiritual label
Mm.
sometimes puts them,
Puts
you
them
know,
off. Yeah.
scares them off,
Yeah.
right? But creativity is something that everyone feels like
Yes.
they could access, or they feel more it's more tangible for some people, and it's
Definitely.
also something everyone has inherently
Yes.
is inherently creative. And there I see, when I
Mm.
talk with people, I see so much blockage in creativity
Mm.
because of the mind, and it's really heartbreaking for me.
mm,
that the mind can inhibit so much potential and love and
mm,
expression of the
mm.
of the
Yes,
creative force in people,
yes.
that I feel like untangling, unblocking
Mm,
this can really help also to become more free and see the distinction between the mind, or making art, let's say, from the mind, or with this constant, no, 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 it's not good enough,
mm,
it's ugly, blah blah,
mm,
or making art in the unity consciousness.
mm. Well, you're really fortunate in some ways in that you haven't had a formal arts education because that can create lots of conceptualization and very dualistic approach because you know tutors sometimes say, oh, this is a great artist and this one isn't, but it's all based on their own perception really. But it's and but that can really inhibit creativity because it's like having your tutor, it's like having a little parrot on your shoulder and you're always wondering what he's going to be saying. But you've never had that parrot on your shoulder.
Yeah. Even being afraid of showing what
Yes,
you made because of
yeah.
the judgment. And then
Mm.
if you hear the judgment of that person, you're also internally judging yourself all the time when you're doing the art, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, there was a time I was really sad that I didn't have an art formation, because that's
Mm.
something I would have loved to. And there is the inherent love of art that I'm still educating myself about it, because
Yes.
there's so much love for it. But I do it on my own, and now with my teacher as well. But yeah, there was a time I was really like, oh, I should have maybe studied it, but now I'm really fine, and that
Mm.
it's just the way it is,
Mm.
because it has some advantages, I guess, as well. But also it can also strengthen the um the dualistic
Mm.
mode and the
Yes.
self-judgment, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's really seeing that everything's as it should be because if you take that thought, for instance, oh, I wish I'd done a course in art, that gives rise to a feeling of contraction. It's a feeling that there's something missing, when really everything's been exactly as it should be in terms of your potential and your life experience. So it's just seeing the way it's unfolding because it's unique in its own way. And so it's just seeing where that takes you really. But seeing the expansion that's available exactly as things are at the moment is a really good way. And it's so nice that you're just so open.
Yeah. And yeah, also, I don't know, or even leading people or helping them to be more getting more in touch with their creativity.
Yes.
And that's, I feel, something that I would really love.
Mm.
But also, at the same time, I don't want to act prematurely, because there is not, something that is kind of emerging, like something like, this, it's just the way it is for now,
Yes.
and it doesn't show up. And sometimes I'm thinking about the story that you told about yourself sending out the tapes,
Mm.
and then everyone was just like, no,
Mm.
because I don't want to act from the mind. I really want
No.
to, yeah, even though it's something that's kind of like bubbling,
Mm.
I don't want to do anything
Mm.
too early,
Mm.
uh, to not be in risk that the mind
Mm.
takes over the process.
Mm. Well, it could well be that your method of assisting with realization is through the creative process, as you say, and that will just emerge on its own, and you're doing it in exactly the right way, which is the priority is for it just to be as joyful as it can possibly be, and really just for it to be in terms of one's own experience rather than feeling that you need to initiate anything because the opportunities will come to you rather than you needing to pursue them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Something I like though, Hannah, is in your email you were saying that you have some questions, but it seems as though you've answered them all for yourself.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Well, it's that's great because it's really that because you're in alignment with effortless being, then whatever you need to know is coming forward, and there just seems to be clarity. Everywhere you look, there seems to be clarity, which is great. And um, but because the ability to just rest as effortless being and then to consciously utilize the personal mode, that distinction's very easily available to you, then whenever you need to know anything really, it's just reverting to impersonal being, and then whatever you need to know will come forward. And
Yeah,
it's a great context to hold because for each of us, um, this world presents itself in a way where the human race in general is portrayed as being very limited, but there are these wonderful experts and they have all the answers and we need to look to them. But that's the opposite. That's the dualistic version. The unified version is that whatever you need to know will arise within oneself. And you've already made that transition, so that's great.
yeah, yeah. I feel like I'm still in the midst of like having this transition
Mm.
and shifting more
Yeah.
to unity consciousness. I cannot say that all parts of my life are always in
No.
that space.
Mm.
And sometimes, yeah, when I don't know what was your experience about like this integration phase,
Mm.
and and even if you, because for me sometimes when I have like an intense um conversation with someone, not anything connected to spirituality but something else, like um I don't know, could even be whatever, politics or something worldly,
Yes.
um because I'm also concerned about like, this how we can, yeah, make this world in general a better place, and like
Mm.
um, social action and so on. So sometimes I have these conversations, and then it feels like it still is a little bit in the, with the
Mm.
unity consciousness is somehow more hidden, and yeah, and then I don't know if that is somehow the end goal, that you can feel this, whatever conversation about whatever topic you
Mm.
have, that you can feel this unity. You know
Yes.
what I mean? Is it like that for you?
It resolves quite easily in a way because it's just that the conditioning we've had is to take a position on things. So to
Mm,
adopt certain beliefs and certain perspectives, saying, oh, this is the way things need to be. But in a way, just in conversations, just that sense of openness and unity where you can certainly, mention certain topics, but in a way where it isn't that you're putting them forward really in a defensive way. You don't feel
yes.
it's that sense of just being open. You can mention certain things, but just to remain fairly open, and because then there isn't any tension then, because it's just you're just stating a point of view or a perspective without having any sense of identity involved with that. So it's maintaining, that's an example really of integrating impersonal being into the personal mode, because the way we're conditioned is to build a character which is based on concepts of limitation, beliefs, and perspectives. But actually, because you're the infinite being, and actually nothing in the relative is ultimately true. It's only ever relatively true. So we can't ever say, oh, this is true because it's
You cannot really be sure.
no, no.
Yeah.
So that's it's really what I would say is just being attentive to the feeling because um, you find that there are certain people that come into your space and they're going to be receptive, and there's going to be something where it's a communication on the level of unity. And the most important aspect is that you're communicating on the level of unity. That's more important than the content being discussed. So you'll become much more proficient at being able to maintain unity when you're in conversation. And then the the different topics, well, you sometimes you can sense with people, there are certain people and they're completely open. So all, if you look at social media or the internet in general, there's such a wide range of views as to the way this world works, and people's perspective is, can be very narrow or can be very open, and you just get to see where sometimes you can see there's a little opening where you can be more direct, and then other times you realize it would be futile, so you don't even go there.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you can sense that with
Mm,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes total sense, David. Thank you. Yeah, totally.
But being attentive, really, it's being attentive to the feeling level is the most important, because you'll find that there's the possibility of just having that sense of openness and neutrality. And sometimes for a bit of fun, you can adopt the personal mode and have a little argument with someone, but it's just
For
for a bit of entertainment.
the kick.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. No, that makes complete sense. Yeah, yeah, for
And
sure.
it's just well, you can see in a way that the dualistic mode loves us to be in opposition, and within relationships, you can see that there's maximum potential for discord, because really, in terms of marriages or relationships with siblings, it sounds as though you're really fortunate that you have very harmonious relationships. But the way we're programmed is, quite often we're put with people where they're mirroring the aspect of ourselves we're not looking at, and so there can be conflict. But most people are absorbed in conflict because they're personalizing, what's going on, rather than realizing that it's actually an energy system which is intent on creating disharmony. So when you see actually with the people that you love, the most important thing is to remain harmonious, even if you have slightly different perspectives on things, and then just be alert to the dualistic realm trying to invite you into conflict.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Because if people knew that it's a sort of energy game that's being played, the number of breakdowns in relationships, it would just really, that would really decline rapidly, because
Yeah.
it's in the mode of blaming someone else and personalizing things and taking a position, all of those things, which make it quite intense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas when you don't have a fixed position, or you don't identify yourself as in that position or that
Mm.
opinion, everything is fine, even if there can be slight discords, or
Yes.
something that it's not agreeing. It's
Mm.
it's fine too. It's fine, absolutely fine. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, totally. And yeah. Another question I had was also about, sometimes I get these invitations about impermanence of
Mm.
this human life,
Mhm.
that specific one.
Mm.
and sometimes it can still bring me into fear because all yeah it I realize that this life as Hanna is limited, and that this body as well as all the my loved ones,
Hmm.
that this is like yeah that this is impermanent, and this can still give me quite some fear,
Hmm.
or some yeah I don't know, this can still give me quite a invitation sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's really the residue of the programming in the dualistic realm, because the dualistic realm is upside down, really. It's an inversion. And so the dualistic realm is trying to make it seem as though the physical realm is the most important one,
Yeah.
and then the emotional, mental, and infinite nature, are either unimportant or they're very distant. What you'll find, though, is the truth of your infinite nature will be seen to be the most real. So the sense of beingness, which is ever present, is something you know yourself to be. And then you'll see everyone else to be that. So all your loved ones, you see that actually they never became the limited being. They've all just remained as the infinite being. So there really isn't anything that's lost. It's just like a little dressing up show, really. And when you see it in that way, then the changes which come, the inevitable changes which come in this realm, they don't really shake you, because you know beforehand, well, actually, it's only the appearance, and the physical realm is the most gross. So if you take, to be aligned with impersonal, effortless being in the body of wisdom, that's the most real. And well, that's the most real in the realm of form. What's ultimately real is attributeless being. But you can see that from the body of wisdom, there's a sequence where the mental realm appears, which is the astral realm, and then the etheric realm, which is the emotional or energetic realm, and then the physical realm. So even when there's a transformation in the physical realm, the other realms aren't affected by that. So it's something that uh, you just see. It's like the physical realm is an opportunity or an invitation into intensity, which isn't ultimately real, because you never became Hannah.
Mm. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you have what you have now, though, is you have the ability to turn the personal mode on and off. So you could say impersonal being is like zero, and then the personal mode is like one. And you can either just remain in your infinite nature, or you can adopt the personal mode, and then you can deliver the lines as though you really are Hannah, and then you can have the intensity of relationships, which are the relationships between the characters on the stage. But there's just the one actor behind it all, which is the infinite being, and everyone remains as that. So it becomes much easier. But it's the reason those invitations are showing up at the moment is because following realization, the the most intense invitations tend to show up first, because they need to be integrated, and when they're integrated, then the ones which follow those are much easier. So if you take the dualistic realm and the devices the dualistic realm uses to put us into mental and emotional turmoil, into fear and those kind of things, then the the sense of impermanence is something which is that's one of the primary weapons or devices that the dualistic realm uses. but it isn't real. There's no substance behind it. But it's just that it's the in India there's the analogy of the string and the snake. You see there's a rope on the floor, and then in a dim room you look at it and you think it's a deadly snake, but actually it's just a piece of rope. And in the same way, we see the impermanence of the physical realm as being very important, when really it's just like a flickering show, because
The least important in the
it's
end.
the least important. And also, there is actually no continuity ultimately, because the the physical realm is it's a sort of frequency within a frequency range, and it's like a binary system. So it's being turned on and off. I think it's about 35,000 times a second. So it's both here and not here, 35,000 times every second. So you tend not to notice that it isn't even here half the time. But it's just a very convincing show, in the same
Yeah,
as
yeah,
with a movie, the film is going through the projector, and it's giving the
yeah.
illusion of movement and reality, and there can be all the mental and emotional responses. But when you stop and look at it, you see, well, actually, it's a particular kind of technology which gives rise to this experience, and that's all the dualistic realm is. It's just a kind of technology which gives the opportunity for this intensity.
Mm, yeah. So when I get those invitations about impermanence, I just see it in that way and kind of come back to impersonal being.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also it's knowing the way the dualistic realm works is the dualistic realm tries to maintain the most intense aspects for as long as possible. So because the dualistic realm knows that there's realization and alignment with one's infinite nature, the, the device the dualistic realm uses is the idea of impermanence. But the devices the dualistic realm uses, they always reveal what they're trying to conceal. So they're always trying to conceal the opposite of what they're trying to convince you of. So really, the reason you're getting invitations into ideas of impermanence is because you've realized permanence. You've realized the permanence of your infinite nature. The dualistic realm is put in scramble mode, trying to conceal that. So it's delivering invitations into the idea of impermanence. But
So
you
it's
can,
really upside down, right?
so you just have a little.
Actually, when you get bad invitations, you can actually be happy because the opposite is true.
Exactly, exactly. That's the context to hold. And then it becomes quite amusing, really, because you
Ah,
see,
that one again. Interesting.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I really, yeah, I also see that, for example, with my grandparents, like, since like they passed away, it it doesn't really make a difference, in that sense. It
No.
does make a difference, but I feel they are not gone anywhere. I feel that so deeply that they are the timeless being, and that I can maintain contact with them.
Well, definitely. In fact, it's easier in a way because we've we've opted for the dualistic experience, which is which is the opposite of our infinite nature. So our infinite nature is effortless being, but to maintain the dualistic mode requires a huge amount of energetic investment. So to maintain the human form, the mind, the emotions, requires a huge amount of energy. So what you find quite often when there's the loss of the physical body is that there's a feeling of huge expansion, because
Mm.
the infinite being was having to create a degree of contraction to show up as a separate being. But when that isn't necessary anymore, there can be a feeling of expansion and infinity. So there can be a feeling of really great space and also unity. And because for you there is already the ability to experience unity, it's knowing that it isn't that your grandparents are still with you, it's that they've always been the infinite being, which you are. So it's closer than you could ever imagine. Well, you can't even use the word close.
Yes, yes, yes. I can see that. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Also, yeah, this whole impermanence thing is really there since I'm getting invitations on that like since I'm so little because ever since I suffered from hypochondria, like health anxiety, like my whole life, and no one knows why because I was always healthy.
Yes.
And it's just some terror that was always um like projected into my mind, probably because of inherited trauma, because it's something that my family has as well, some other members of my family. So yeah, but but actually this whole yeah, being concerned with impermanence and health and so on, it also that was the initiator for putting me on the path because the
Yeah.
suffering was so big, and I thought that it shouldn't be like that, and this is too crazy to be true.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's a good example of the two components really of invitations because um, the hypochondria was an intense invitation. So, firstly, that was showing up because of your spiritual potential. The dualistic realm knew your spiritual potential and it wanted to try to conceal it by diverting your attention to impermanence.
yeah,
And so but what it did, it utilized the the sort of
its
family.
own weapons against itself, maybe.
Yes. Well, it looked through your files and it said, well, actually, there are certain frequencies which have been experienced within this family line, um, which we can activate, so we can divert Hannah's attention from her infinite potential because she's going to be waking up pretty soon if we don't do that. So so that's what it did. So
Yeah,
it was all guns blazing from the dualistic realm to try to keep you in limitation. But there's always the higher aspect, which is so the dualistic version is that it's limitation and it's fear of impermanence. But actually, the absolute value is the way you describe it, which is that the limitations being delivered were actually opening the door to precisely the aspects of your own potential which were trying to be concealed. So it became an opportunity. It's the same as with, if you take the experience of physical death of loved ones, the dualistic version is, oh, I've lost someone I dearly love, I'll never see them again. All of the sort of conditioned versions. But then what you see in terms of your infinite nature is that it gives the opportunity for unity consciousness because there can be the direct experience of unity, but it's unity with everything really, and with that sense of unity, once the sense of unity is reestablished, then there's also the possibility for more subtle aspects of communication like telepathy, intuition, and so for there to be a relationship continuing with loved ones who are existing in terms of their infinite nature, those channels of communication open. So it becomes quite interesting then.
definitely. Yes. for sure. Yeah, David, that's so true. Wow, it's really wild how everything is just turned upside down
Mm, mm,
in the dualistic realm.
mm, mm,
Yeah, yeah. And another question I had was, so mm, I still sometimes get the I feel like the mind or the ego, even though it doesn't exist as an entity,
mm,
wants to, you know, to still there's still this urge that it wants to land somewhere, like to have a position, have a something to identify
mm,
with.
mm,
So, for example, I get these invitations of like, you know, oh, like, what are you going to do in the future? Or
mm,
uh, wouldn't that idea of the future be nice? Or rather that, or na na na. And I can see that this is the mind grasping to land somewhere.
mm,
And this is um what still kind of keeps the realm of personhood or the wheel of personalization spinning a bit.
mm.
Um, and and yeah, actually, and I really don't want to entertain it as
Mm.
m- as more as it, as much as more as it needs to. I don't know if that's well
Yes,
said, but maybe you know what I mean.
yes, I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well,
So
again, it's an invitation, and it is an inversion again. So, what the mind's doing is it's trying to deliver an invitation into the idea that you need to create a mental concept of security.
yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
But the reason that it's doing that is because your ultimately your ultimate security is in your infinite nature, where you don't need to create a limited concept because really your infinite nature, the infinite intelligence of your infinite nature will guide you in a way where the future will unfold perfectly and everything that you actually came here to achieve and experience will be presented to you effortlessly. So it's the opposite to the way we've been conditioned because the conditioning is that we're conditioned into the idea that we need a mind-made version of security.
Ah, yeah.
People try to do that through their job or through, financial security or security in relationships and those kind of things.
Planning and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Mm.
but actually, you'll see that you'll be guided from your impersonal nature, and it will just happen effortlessly. But it'll be very playful and childlike, really, which is which was there in the early part of your life. Because you had a really nice childhood, your alignment with your infinite nature was there until you had those questions about your health. And they were really the invitations into the dualistic realm more intensely. But the opportunity just to return to the simplicity of the way you're experiencing prior to then is what is going to come forward. So it just becomes quite playful and joyful, and it's a sense of adventure without any sense of worry. It's just
Mm.
knowing that things will work out, people come along. It's already doing that, that you're very fortunate that because there was alignment in the early stage of your life, and there hasn't been that much disturbance, that the harmony is still largely there in your relationships. So
Yeah.
it'll be just be lots of fun, really.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, actually this whole like thing about making pictures about the future and like having this false sense of stability of the concept of a future actually drains you of your joy of life.
Yes.
And yeah, it takes away so much, right? And yeah, and it's just seeing when those kind of like suggestions appear, to just say, well,
Yes.
no, thank you, because I'm the infinite being and I will be guided by
Yeah.
the infinite being, right?
Yes.
And just remain in the unity and just decline it as any other invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the way you can just have the best experience really is it's the opposite to the way we've been conditioned. So the conditioned version is that people are striving to create a mind-made sense of security. So they're working really hard. They're trying to earn as much money as possible. They're trying to create this security in an illusory future and create stability and have plans and ideas of the way their life needs to be happy. But that's all in the conceptual realm.
And it's not even true, because once they get there, it's the same.
Exactly. It's yeah, that's well, because it's in service, that approach is in service to the dualistic realm, which is to maintain dissatisfaction. But
Very effectively.
yeah, with the approach you have, and you're already doing this really, which is that you're prioritizing a sense of joy, delight, ease, unity, harmony in every day. And it isn't a destination in the future, it's where you already are. And in the way you were saying you don't need to be, on the beach somewhere, that you're happy just where you are, then that's really the key because you find that you're establishing a sense of fullness and infinite potential exactly where you are. And so, just on a practical level, doing things where you say the work you do enables you to have a life where there isn't unnecessary concern about, say, your finances or about your accommodation, but just keeping it quite simple. And then, but really, what you're doing there is you're you're allocating a certain percentage of attention to the practicality of life just to keep it easy, but you're creating as much space as possible for new things to come in. Whereas the dualistic version is to try to work really hard, create more money than you need, work harder than you need to, not really have a sense of unity. It's a sort of dualistic experience where lots of people are spending a large amount of their time doing things they don't really enjoy doing, to have a very small percentage of time doing what they want to, and the dualistic realm is structured like that. So it's 5 days of work and then 2 days, well, usually of recovery. For most people, if they work 5 days, it's a day of recovery and then a day of just trying to recalibrate their system. And the same with holidays, really. The idea we work for 50 weeks and have 2 weeks holiday and think that's normal. But it's really that the opportunity is to have that sense of ease and joy in whatever you do. And you're not swinging between the polarities of the idea that you have to do certain things to be happy and then you try to avoid all these other things. It's just very unified. And what you find with that is that it's progressive because there's a sense of everything being fine as it is, and for your experience being full already, and there being a sense of abundance, and and it just develops from there. Really, it just continues to be guided, and you don't really need to be giving too much attention on a mental level. Just really being very childlike and prioritizing sense of ease and joy and um, for your life to be quite effortless, really.
Exactly. Yes, yes. And yeah, that's really my priority. And even the job I have, it's a part-time job.
Mm.
And I do really love it.
Yes.
It's really nice. So I enjoy that too.
Yeah.
So
Sounds
and
perfect.
yeah, and the rest of the time where I have complete which I have completely free, I just let the day unfold and have it as nicely as possible. And sometimes it's funny because in on one of those days, which is completely, like free and so on, and I just wake up and I make a coffee and I sit in unity consciousness, and then the mind is like, but what's next? What will
Yeah.
you do all the time in this unity consciousness? Yeah, it's funny.
It is. I had a funny experience a few years ago. I went for a coffee with some friends, and the one friend's really successful, had a very successful business, and the other one was just receiving government benefits. And it was quite comical, really, because the guy, who's really successful, he said, "Oh, it's great. I can, because I've worked really hard, I can, get up in a morning like this and just have a little stroll and pick up a newspaper and go and have a coffee. And it's so nice, to be able to do that, having had all these years of hard work." And my other friend says, "Well, I can do that every day."
Oh, that's really great. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Uh, yeah, it's really an adventure.
It is. Well, the resource of infinite intelligence is quite a tangible resource, which has been completely overlooked and also concealed by the dualistic realm. The dualistic realm, the last thing it wants us to discover is there's a source of intelligence which will actually be guiding us and which is benign. Um, it wants everyone to believe that they need to take responsibility
Hmm.
for all their experiences with the mind.
Yeah, totally. And it's really funny because when you, or at least for me, when there's this thing of like, oh, I need to do that, or I have this responsibility or something like that, and then I just remember, oh wait, I'm effortless being. Oh great, there is no effort. I can just watch, and then everything just drops and like, oh, okay. And then there is the joy coming up. It's like, all right, I don't need to do all that stuff. If something is happening, like the body just does it. And sometimes, yeah, I also feel like the mind makes such a fuss around things, something that can be like um can seem like it's kind of a burden or something that's not quite fun, like some bureaucratic stuff.
Yes.
The mind makes so much fuss, like, oh, I don't want to do that. Let's not do it. Like, let's extend it. Let's do it tomorrow. Let's maybe do it next week. Whereas if you wouldn't have all that, or if you
Burden.
disregarded that chatter and just sit, do the stuff, after 2 hours it's done.
Mm.
Yeah, not a big problem. I can listen to nice music when I do more bureaucratic stuff. Like, it's not as bad as
No,
as the mind suggests it's all the
no.
time. So yeah, it's really interesting.
It's
Yeah.
great to recognize that actually, because that's the freedom from suffering, really, when there's no resistance, whatever needs to be done. And you find that the dualistic realm tries to make it seem as though there's a scarcity of time, scarcity of resources, scarcity of everything, really, especially a scarcity of love. But gradually you just find that everything is available, and just functioning from impersonal being, from the sovereignty of your infinite nature, then you don't accept those invitations into scarcity and lack, especially lack of time, lack of love. You just experience things, you just know everything's available. and you just experience it on your own terms, really. And it's amazing the way things previously seem to be a burden. They tend to just dissolve in the background, and then other things come forward which take care of aspects of your experience where there's more time, there's more enjoyment. And it's really because everyone is the infinite being, and we're shining this light of infinite potential into the realm of experience. But if we've put a filter of limitation and we're shining the light through that, then it's the limitation we're experiencing. But we don't need to do that.
The same light. Yeah, exactly. And another thing that's really funny is that before I was always trying to, if a parent problem that the mind would suggest, because it can always reinvent new problems,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So genius at that. And it would just like I would just try to obsess on thinking about how I would resolve it or be prepared to solve it,
Yes.
or think about all the scenarios that in my head I would feel safe if any of those scenarios appear. And just it just seems so crazy to me now because it just drained
Mm,
so much unnecessary energy
mm.
in it. And whereas now, if something appears or a problem or an apparent problem, it's like an invitation, and I just say, yeah, well, thank you, no.
Yes.
Instead of making all that fuss, it's really, wow, it's really there's so much suffering because of that.
Mm,
It's so, oh
mm.
yeah, it's so wild and yeah, I also because it seems so s- yeah, it's so different for me now.
Mm.
Then yeah, it's difficult to if someone is in that program to tell them, hey, this is just a
Mm.
scam. Really, it's
Yeah.
just a scam to rob
Feel your energy.
of your yeah, of your life energy, of your joy, of everything that could be invested in so much nicer things. But yeah, it's just so ingenious because it feels so real, right? When you are there,
Mm,
you're
mm.
just like, yeah, of course I need to think about all these different scenarios in order to feel safe. But this is just it's just such a scam.
I love the way you describe it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. It's great to speak with someone so young who's so clear.
Thank you, David. I also really, really, really enjoy talking to you and really like every single video that you put out there is such a big help and I feel it's so lovely how all the people come together and with every conversation you listen to see things in a slightly different angle
Mm,
can be very helpful because sometimes you feel like you're stuck on a certain thing or you seem to be stuck and
mm,
then you just listen to an experience of another person and you're like, ah, yeah, sure.
mm,
And it's really lovely how with these videos you also kind of created a community, I guess, that
mm.
of mutual help because that's I feel what it is to have these videos available and to see because I feel very connected to every single one of the or every single person you had a conversation with. It's very nice.
Yeah, it's all happened without trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing, really. But you can just see how there's an intelligence guiding certain people, and then they come forward, and the sequence and the questions and their own cognitions. It's all perfect, really,
Mm.
without
Yeah.
having to take any responsibility for any of it.
Oh, that's so great, right? Just listening to that is like, oh, oh, that's good. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Life can be easy.
Mm.